My name is Emily. I'm 38 years old. My ex-husband's new wife tried to steal everything my dad left me when he died. But before I tell you how my dad made a secret plan to catch them, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It all started on a Tuesday. It had been 1 week since we buried my father. I was in his rose garden. That was the only place where I still felt close to him. The air smelled like wet dirt and old flowers. My hands were dirty from working in the garden. For the first time in days, I didn't feel so sad and heavy in my chest. That's when I heard footsteps on the rocks in our driveway. It was Jessica. She's my ex-husband David's new wife. She walked into the garden like she owned everything. She had a mean little smile on her face. "This garden is so pretty," she said. But her voice was fake, like she was pretending to be nice. "It's going to be ours soon. You should probably start packing up your stuff." I just stood there, my fingers held tight to the garden scissors in my hand. I didn't look at her. Instead, I looked at my father's favorite rose. It was a special one that won prizes. The flower was the color of a sunset. I didn't say anything back to her. My lawyer, Sarah, had told me not to talk to them. But while Jessica kept talking and bragging about how David should get everything, I kept thinking one thing over and over. They have no idea. They have no idea that their own wanting too much money is exactly what my father planned to use against them. It's weird what you remember when someone you love dies. I kept thinking back to a talk I had with Dad in his office. It was about a year before he got really sick. He was cleaning his glasses. The light from his lamp was shining on them. "Emily," he said, quietly but seriously, "I've asked your brother Nathan to stay away from you and to stay close to them. It's going to hurt your feelings, I know. But it's the only way to keep him safe from what I think is going to happen. You have to trust him, even when your brain tells you not to." Back then, I didn't understand what he meant, but his words became real and painful after my divorce. Nathan had picked David's side instead of mine. I remember one terrible phone call where he told me, "You're being too emotional. David was like a son to Dad for 12 years. He should get some of Dad's money too." It felt like someone punched me in the stomach. The two men I should have been able to count on the most, my brother and my ex-husband, had left me all alone. I felt completely and totally by myself. The only person who helped me was Sarah, my dad's lawyer. She called me the day after Dad's funeral. "Your father was a really smart man," she said. "Trust his plan, but more importantly, trust yourself. He left you the tools, but you're the one who has to use them." A week after Jessica came to the garden to be mean to me, the real fight started. A fancy envelope came to my house. Someone delivered it by hand. It felt heavy, like a gravestone. Inside was a letter from a big, expensive law company. It said that David and Jessica wanted to take 50% of everything my father left me. They said David deserved it because he was loyal and like a son to my father. I felt sick reading it. It was one thing to hear Jessica say mean things. It was another thing to see it written down in legal papers. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just walked around the quiet house. The words from that letter kept burning in my mind. Then I remembered something else my father said. This was from his last days, when he was very sick. His voice was weak and quiet. "When you need to be strong, listen to our 1812 overture. That's our victory music." Suddenly, I knew what I had to do. I went to his office. It still smelled like old books and his pipe. I ran my fingers along all his music records until I found the right one. It was Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture. My hands were shaking as I took the record out of its cover. There, tucked inside the old cardboard, was another envelope. This one had my name on it, in my father's fancy handwriting. Inside was a small, pretty key and one piece of paper. It said, "My dearest Emily, I have left you the weapons, but only you can choose when to fire them." I sat down in his leather chair. The cold metal key was digging into my hand. This was my fight now. The next morning, I went to Sarah's office. I gave her the key. "I think I know what this is for," I said. She took me back to my father's office, to his big wooden desk. I thought I knew every inch of that desk. She got down on her knees and pressed part of the fancy carving on the side. A small hidden drawer that you couldn't see clicked open. Inside was a bunch of papers and one small computer drive. Sarah and I spent the next hour looking through everything. "It's all here," she said. Her voice sounded amazed and angry at the same time. "But it's all mixed up. Money records, sound files with weird code names." She saw it like a legal puzzle, but I saw my dad's smart mind at work. I took all the files home that night. I didn't sit around being sad. I worked. I spread all the papers on my dining room table. I made coffee and got to work. I might not have been as smart about business as my father, but I never gave up, just like him. I remembered things he taught me about looking for patterns and following where the money went. Then, around 3 in the morning, I saw it. It wasn't just a few stolen checks. Jessica had been secretly taking money and putting it into fake company accounts that belonged to her. They weren't just stealing from a dead man. They were planning to take over his whole company from the inside, using David's access to everything. My blood turned cold. I called Sarah. My voice was shaking. "It's worse than we thought, but I know how to prove it. I know how Dad's trap works." For just a second, I felt really scared. Could I really do this? Could I face them in a room and destroy them? Then, I pictured Jessica's mean smile in my father's garden. My fear turned into anger and strength. Yes, I could do this. The big fight didn't happen in a fancy wooden room like in movies. It happened in a boring beige meeting room. They called it a mandatory pre-trial settlement conference. The air felt thick and tense. David wouldn't look at me, but Jessica stared right at me with a look like she had already won. A neutral person presented the offer. "Mr. Carter's will makes a one-time offer to Mr. David Carter and his wife, Mrs. Jessica Carter, of 35% of the liquid assets of the estate. This must be accepted today to avoid more court fighting." 35%. That was a huge amount of money. It was enough to make their greed stronger than their caution. Jessica's lawyer nodded at her. David looked really happy and relieved. They both picked up pens and signed the settlement papers. The moment the ink dried, Jessica gave me one last pitying smile. That's when Sarah stood up. Her voice was calm and clear. "Thank you. And now," she said, turning a page in her folder, "as stated by Clause 7B of the settlement, which happens when you accept this money, we will now publicly show a full audit of all money interactions between the people getting money and Carter Enterprises." The color left their lawyer's face. David's mouth dropped open. Sarah plugged the computer drive into the big TV screen on the wall. I watched as my work, my long night of detective work, filled the screen. First, a chart I had made showing money moving from my father's company to fake companies owned by Jessica. Then, David's signature on papers allowing transfers that he clearly didn't understand. And finally, the sound recording. Sarah clicked play. The room was filled with Jessica's voice from a hidden microphone in my dad's office. She was talking to someone we didn't know. "Once the old man is gone, the whole company will be mine. The daughter is a sentimental fool. She'll be easy to push out." David looked like he was going to throw up. He just stared at the screen and couldn't speak. But Jessica went completely still. The smugness disappeared. It was replaced with scary, cold anger. She didn't scream, She didn't cry. Her face became like a mask of ice. She leaned across the table. In a poisonous whisper that only I could hear, she said, "You have no idea who you just made an enemy of." Everything got crazy after that. Their lawyer frantically tried to fix the damage. Jessica started to move toward me, but before she could take 2 steps, someone moved to stand between us. It was Nathan. He didn't even look at Jessica. He just looked at me. For the first time in years, I saw my real brother again. His eyes were filled with deep, painful regret. He said, "Dad's plan was to save the estate. My plan was just to save you. I'm sorry I failed to make you feel safe." He pushed a thin folder into my hand. "This is everything else I found. The police are going to want to see it." I looked down at the folder, then back at my brother, my protector. I took a deep breath. "Thank you, Nathan," I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. "We'll talk later, after all of this." It wasn't complete forgiveness yet, but it was a start. It was everything. The next day, I sat alone in my dad's office. Winning felt empty. The room was a mess, filled with boxes of his life that needed to be sorted. I felt overwhelmed, like I was drowning in the past. The door opened and Nathan came in. He didn't say anything. He just put a hot cup of coffee on the desk next to me and started quietly sorting a stack of papers. We worked without talking for an hour. It was a silent peace agreement, the first step in rebuilding our relationship. A few months passed. The news reports were short but satisfying. Jessica, whose real name was actually Margaret, was a con artist wanted by police in 3 states. She was going to prison for a long time. David got a shorter sentence because he helped the police. The estate and the company were safe. They were mine. This afternoon, I was back in the garden. But I wasn't just taking care of my father's roses. I had a notebook in my lap and a measuring tape on the ground. I was designing a new section, a vegetable garden, in a piece of land that had been empty for years. I wasn't just protecting his legacy anymore. I was adding to it. I was building something of my own. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like dirt and possibility. My father had given me the tools, but I had built this victory myself. This house wasn't a fortress I had to protect. It was the foundation where I would build my own future. I picked up a small shovel and pushed it into the fresh, dark earth. It felt good. It felt like a new beginning. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's been a lot, but I'm stronger because of it. I have a question for all of you watching. What's a piece of advice a parent or loved one gave you that only made sense years later? I'd love to read your stories in the comments below. And if my story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. It really does help. Thank you.